abuse in childhood. This is what happened to us. Traumatic abuse in childhood. We were literally torn out of a symbiotic relationship to the earth by the forces of male dominance, agriculture, sedentary living, so forth and so on. And we've been trying to scratch an itch that we can't find ever since. And it has, money doesn't do it, power doesn't do it, nothing seems to do it. We seem to be the unhappy monkey. And we take this unhappiness out on each other with a vengeance. And you see, what happened was when the mushroom faded, the million years of pharmacologically interrupted patterns of male dominance reasserted themselves. But it was no more a foraging monkey with this style. It was a creature with language, tools, music, social organization, and suddenly it got very ugly. And people weren't interested, and people began fighting over the women. So we don't want to have orgies anymore. This woman is my woman. Touch her, you die, and so forth and so on. And we are living out the legacy of this. Well, before I talk about the social consequences of it for us, I want to go back to the question, what was so great about it? I mean, we've talked about orgy, but you can have orgy without psilocybin. What was so wonderful about that proto-historical mode? Well, this is where it becomes slightly more woo-woo. Because what we have to talk about is, what is the psychedelic experience anyway? And I maintain that if we're talking about psilocybin, and we're talking about taking it in nature, as these people did, that, yes, first come the dancing mice, the little candies, the colored grids, and so forth and so on. But what eventually happens, quickly, like 10 minutes later, is there is an entity in the trance, in the vision. There is a mind there waiting that speaks good English and invites you up into its room. And once there, you realize that this is what all the hoopla about the Gaian mind and the rebirth of the goddess and all that is about. It's not a metaphor, folks. It's a headline in biology. We are not the only intelligent-minded species occupying this planet. We may be the only bipedal hairless mammal with intelligence on this planet, but there is something out there spread through the grasses, the forests, the rivers, and the oceans. Our own emergence into intelligence took less than 2 million years. Life has been on this planet for 1.5 billion years, and we don't know how many strange pathways beckon. But at some point, a kind of mind came into existence, and it is real. It's what lies behind the religious impulse in our species. There really is somebody else sharing the local mind space. And I don't believe we're talking theology here. In other words, this is not, in Milton's wonderful phrase, the God who hung the stars like lamps in heaven. It's not about that. For me, that's a big question mark. But it is the God, goddess of this earth. It is the biological mind. It is that all boundaries are illusions, and that life is a thinking, feeling entelecky of some sort. And we are just like a little droplet that has somehow escaped from the river of cognition and now imagine that we're the only water in the cosmos. Not so, it turns out. The reason the psychedelic experience is so baffling and transformative, even as we sit here with your heads full of Heidegger and Husserl and, I don't know, Wilson Phillips and all this stuff, is because in contact with that, we have no more sophistication than our orgiastic, mushroom-munching ancestors. Civilization doesn't give you a leg up on this stuff. In fact, it makes it harder to figure out what's going on, because we have defined nature as dead. You know, atoms screaming through empty space, ruled by tensor equations of the third degree. That's our picture of what nature is. That isn't what it is. It's a mind of some sort. Okay, what is the implication of all this? Is this just some kind of fringo anthropological revisionism? No, it isn't, because the fall into history and its consequences is, at this point, a loaded gun held to the head of the entire planet. We are about to pull over the soup cauldron. And if we do this, then 2.5 billion years of evolutionary advance will be shot. Nobody else ever dropped the ball. So, you know, we appear to be vying for this peculiar honor. If we do not awaken to the consequences of ego, then we are going to run this system right over the edge. The whole thing which characterizes our dilemma as a global society is our inability to feel the consequences of what we are doing. You know, we've got the data. The ozone hole is disappearing. The planktonic life in the sea will die if it does. That will disrupt the food chain. The world food supply will drop by 60%. Everybody who isn't white as a sheet will have to starve in that case, and so forth and so on. I mean, we actually toy not only with our own extinction, but with the extinction of all life on the planet and with the extinction of the idea of dignity and decency itself. Well, I'm not in this psychedelic game because I think it's easy or because I think it's going to be a cinch. I'm in it because I think it's the only game in town. You know, if hortatory preaching could have done the trick, then the Sermon on the Mount would have turned the corner. If cautionary data flowing back to ruling institutions could do the trick, then sometime after Thomas Malthus, people would have begun to hit the brakes. Nothing seems to work. We're sick. We need pharmacological intervention. The ego is permitting us to slowly, not so slowly, commit suicide. And, you know, the fact that we cannot act collectively, that we are suspicious of all forms of collectivism, that we really are all for one and one for all is not our style. Instead, what we have going is a catfight. And, you know, no less a straight person than Arthur Koestler, in a book called The Ghost in the Machine, said, humans are so wired for beating the brains out of woolly mastodons. That's what evolution has equipped us to do, not negotiate weapons treaties and destroy bacteriological factories. We have to force our evolution. We have to chemically restructure the primate brain so that we do not commit suicide. And the only way to do it in the time left is for the psychedelic community to stand up on its hind legs and roar. And, you know, maybe they'll build camps for us. But the point being, I think there's a moral imperative to try what works. I mean, you know, in the 60s, psychedelics were called consciousness-expanding drugs. A good old phenomenological description. Well, if consciousness does not loom large in the future history of our species, then what the hell kind of future is it going to be? No future at all, I maintain. So if there is even the slightest iota of possibility that these things do what I'm saying they do, then we need to get Johnny Quick on it and check it out. because we may be beyond the point of no return right now.